I'm not a huge fan of Rhino. I don't think he's got a great look. He's a little small and kind of looks out of shape. Obviously, he's got to be in good shape to compete in the ring, but I think he's a mid-card wrestler who's been shoved into a top-tier spot. Not to mention, I'm sick of hearing Don West scream, "Gore, gore, gore." It's a spear. There's nothing special about it. I'm so sick of that. I don't see a lot of potential here. I don't see someone who's incredibly over with the fans. As a member of the TNA frontline, he kind of gets lost in the mix. Even when they threw him a title shot against Sting, it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to lose that match, and no one seemed to care. Roxy Laveau is one of my favorite knockouts. Although I do kind of miss her hair, I still love watching her perform. She pulls off some great moves, but unfortunately she seems to be little more than a jobber. She gets randomly teamed up for tag team matches against the Beautiful People, and she had some great matches against Kong. The best was when Kong bombed her down onto the chair. She's a tough woman, she's got skill, and I enjoy watching her wrestle even though I just don't see her wearing a title at any point in time. If I were running the game, I'd give her a run with the belt, if for no other reason than that she's tremendous in the ring. Samoa Joe is talented, but he's very bland. He's just boring. From his bad promos to his stupid tights. I'm not impressed. I never popped for this guy. Even when he was the heel champion, I found him boring. Now, this might not be all his fault. His last feud was against Kevin Nash, and you can't exactly push a match to its limits when you're going against Nash. He's got a feud brewing with Scott Steiner right now, and that could be interesting because they're both pretty big guys. But again, this is just another member of the TNA roster that I could honestly care less about. Stay or go, it's not going to cause me to tune in or out any more than I already do. Scott Steiner is another member of the Main Event Mafia who is pushing the limits of his age. Rumor has it that he's in incredible pain from his back and his knees, and that his time in the business is slowly winding down. He can still do some great things. He still has a great look, although with those arms, I find it real hard to believe that this guy isn't doing some serious juicing. I'd say by the end of the year, he'll be lowered to a mid-card status or completely phased out from TNA. You had your time in the spotlight, Scott. It's time to step aside and let one of these kids reach the top. Shark Boy has got to be one of the silliest gimmicks I've ever seen. Prior to his Stone Cold turn, he was mostly just laughable, but I have to admit I get a kick out of seeing this guy talking like he's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Though he almost always loses, I still like to watch him. He's got some good moves, his imitation of Austin is spot on, and he provides a nice comic break from the deeper storylines. This is something I haven't seen before. A referee becoming a wrestler, and yet still being a referee at the same time. The storyline could be gold if handled properly. His feud with Bashir was interesting, and the crowd pops every time someone lays their hands on him and he snaps. Although every time he snaps I can't help but think a little bit of Ken Shamrock. He has a great look, he's in good shape, and he's a decent worker. If anything, the idea of him being a referee helps keep him from having to cut promos or do any real mic work. He just ends up in situations where he defends himself and usually ends up clearing the ring. He's becoming a fan favorite, and I for one will keep watching to see what develops with him. SoCal Val isn't a knockout. She doesn't do much, if any, mic work. She's really just arm candy for Sanjay Dutt, and following the storyline with Jay Lethal, I haven't even seen her that much. There isn't a whole lot to say here about her. If anything, it speaks volumes. I couldn't find a single picture of this woman anywhere near the actual ring, but you do have to admit, she sure is easy on the eyes. Sojourner Bolt is a new addition to the TNA Knockouts. Tonight, she won the Battle Royal to become #1 contender for the Knockouts title. Being a member of Kong's stable, known as the Kongtourage, this should provide an interesting storyline. Technically speaking, she's a decent worker, although I find her look is a little too similar to Rocker Khan's. Basically the same, minus the makeup. She's new to TNA, and we'll have to see how she works out, but for now, she's still sort of up in the air. Not a whole lot to say about the guru Sanjay Dutt. You don't see him in the ring much anymore, and the crowd doesn't seem to care about him, and the only thing drawing attention to him at all is SoCal Val on his arm. I still don't understand why he won her in that storyline against Jay Lethal if they were just going to let him fade away. It seems kind of like it was a useless storyline, and in the end, it just takes two stars that were on top for a small time and pushes them to the back burner. Suicide may be the first time in wrestling history that a character was made directly in response to a video game character. All he really does is show up randomly and clear the ring when someone is attacking a defenseless person. In a way, he kind of calls back to the way Sting used to be on WCW Nitro, and to that degree, I like him. He doesn't seem to have any huge plans right now, although I'd like to see him get involved in a beatdown type situation where he saves someone and then it creates a feud and we could see him in some kind of great match, because honestly, I'd like to see this guy perform for more than 15 seconds. Taylor Wilde came in like a firecracker and defeated Awesome Kong for the TNA Knockouts title. I'm sure it seemed like a good idea at the time, but the crowd didn't seem to care. She wasn't given enough time to build up a following. Having lost the title and now been competing in random matches, she's starting to get the crowd behind her. She has good in-ring skill, she's not too bad on the mic, and she's pretty entertaining to watch. With her size, she is the perpetual underdog, and I find I always root for the underdog. She's getting better, and I'd say in '09 we could see her make some great progress. Last but not least, one of the best tag teams in the history of wrestling, Team 3D. Brother Ray and Brother Devon are legendary as one of the best tag teams in history, and I certainly agree with that assessment. Rumor has it that Brother Ray is thinking of retiring, which is why you've seen Devon in a few singles matches. Ray was always the mouthpiece, but since Devon started speaking, I can't understand why. Devon seems like he's got some good ability when it comes to cutting promos. All in all, these guys will probably hold the titles again before they split, if they do. I'd love to see a wedge driven between these two and have a match take place between the two of them. That's something I haven't seen before. TNA certainly have their share of great performers. Their knockout division blows the WWE divas out of the water when it comes to technical skill and in-ring performance. Their X division is the template for what should be a cruiserweight division within the WWE itself. I enjoy watching TNA. I find it exciting and fun, and it's a nice change of pace from WWE's programming. For a while there, I was growing a little bored with WWE being the only game in town. I think TNA will continue to climb, and I'm not saying they'll ever reach the plateau that WWE's on, but they're well on their way to getting as close as you can right now. Well, that does it for my roster reviews, and we're going to transition into what will become weekly episodes of Unmarked Talk Wrestling, with questions, answers, review, analysis, and opinions of everything WWE and TNA. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send them to me, and I will do my best to get them on the air. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.